Hey everyone, welcome to Mr. Geopolitics. So, I just put out an in-depth video on what has happened today in Ukraine, in the Izium, Kharkiv sector, because it's been very eventful today. But I decided to make a shorter video for all of you guys who don't want to watch, a 20-minute, 30-minute, 40-minute video. Don't want to go that in depth. Just want to know what's going on. So, basically, the Ukrainians, we all know that a few weeks ago they launched a counteroffensive. Like 12 days ago or so, they launched a counteroffensive. And we all know that was in Kherson. And that counteroffensive has basically stalled. They haven't made that many gains. In the Izium, just wait a second, in the Izium Kharkiv sector, the Ukrainians have managed to liberate at least 4,000 square kilometers, and that's probably going to turn into 5,000 plus squared kilometers when it's all said and done. Maybe more, maybe 6,000, because the Russians have abandoned Kupiansk. They held the city for a day or two. They repelled the Ukrainians once, but they have gone to they've crossed over to the eastern side of the river, or they fled to the north. And in the south, basically the troops in Izium, the garrison in Izium, have either withdrawn or are in the process of withdrawing to the eastern side of the Oskil River. This is the Oskil River, and as we know, rivers act as natural defensive barriers. So the Russians have basically escaped, have fled to fight another day. That's the only positive out of this for the Russians, is that they, throughout all of this, they managed to avoid getting encircled. No large grouping of Russian troops has been encircled by the Ukrainians, despite the Ukrainians gaining all this territory. The Russians have basically left the western side of the Oskil River, and the entire Kharkiv region, except for some areas still in the north, are now in the hands of the Ukrainians. This is the biggest victory for Ukraine since the start of the war. You could argue it's the biggest victory since the start of the war, or if you think that when the Ukrainians pushed the Russians back from Kiev and Kharkiv, if you think that was more significant, then this is the most significant gain for the Ukrainians since what happened in Kiev and Kharkiv. Now, I go in depth in my other video, but one thing is that this entire area is full of rivers and bridges, river crossings. It seems like the Russians were caught off guard. We've gotten some numbers today. It seems like the Ukrainians have 15,000 or so troops. They deployed 15,000 troops for this operation, and the Russians had something like 5,000 or less. So when you go on the offensive, the rule of thumb is you want to outnumber the enemy 3-1, and it seems like the Ukrainians outnumbered the Russians at least 3-1. It seems like this offensive caught the Russians off guard. It shouldn't have, because for the last couple of weeks the Ukrainians had been building up. There had been reports about a buildup of troops and armor in Kharkiv and to the south of Kharkiv, but I don't know if the Russians even had a contingency plan. I don't know if this is a lack of leadership for this local sector, or lack of military leadership in general, but the Russians were definitely caught off guard, and before they could send reinforcements, the Ukrainians pushed their advantage. They pushed forward as hard as they could, and they basically they forced the Russians out. they made it they made the situation untenable for the Russians. So the Russians have left this entire region, and I'll show you some other maps. This is the map from about 2 days ago. This is from Rybar. He's a pro-Russian map maker, but he's seems to be pretty honest when it comes to his map making and his reports. But anyways, here we see the Izium, Kharkiv region. He calls it the Battle of Kharkiv. Anyways, we see the Ukrainians. They took what's the town? Balaklia. They took Balaklia, and then here's Balaklia, right? And then they push forward, and then they suddenly push north unexpectedly, and then they came across another town. They took Volokiv, and then they came across Shevchenkov, and then it seemed like they were going to fight for that town. And then they just pushed east, so that it was a very successful armored thrust, reminiscent of what the Germans did in World War II. But anyways, the areas in the east were contested for a while. Then the Ukrainians consolidated their gains and continued to gain more territory to the south and the north once they made it to the river at Senkove. Then that area was disputed for a while, and the Russians did use their artillery and launch a decent number of airstrikes on Ukrainian positions. From one report, one convoy of Ukrainian armored vehicles was completely destroyed on the way to Kupiansk. But anyways, the Ukrainians kept pushing night and day, and the Russians ended up withdrawing from Kupiansk. So this is what it looks like now. This and you can see it's lightly colored right here where Izium is. This map is not in English because it just came out, but yeah, so this entire sector the Ukrainians have taken, and the Russians didn't blow up any bridges. It doesn't seem like they're even going to destroy any of the bridges across the Oskil River. The Ukrainians destroyed one of the bridges, but to prevent the Russians from fleeing, from withdrawing successfully. But the Russians themselves didn't destroy any bridges to the west to slow down the Ukrainians, and they don't seem to be. Doesn't seem like they're going to be destroying any bridges across the Oskil River. I'm not sure why. Maybe because they just. Maybe because when you destroy a bridge, it makes it more difficult for your own forces to launch a counteroffensive. I mean, if the Russians ever do decide to launch a counteroffensive, or ever, let's say in the next couple of months, they try to regain this territory, what would happen is that they would also have an issue crossing the river too, right? So it's kind of like a double-edged sword when you blow a bridge. It's kind of an act of desperation. Now the question is, will the Ukrainians, will they be able to continue their offensive? Will they be able to continue their offensive going east? And one of the reasons the Russians withdrew from Izium is because the Ukrainians were sending several armored columns towards Liman. And if they took Liman, they would be able to completely cut off Izium, right? They would be able to completely prevent them from crossing going east. And there's nowhere else really to go. You can't go north, west, or south. So then Izium bridgehead would be cut off, and then the Russians would have to fight their way through. And then the Russian troops east of the river would have to try to reconnect with the bridgehead, and the Russians just thought that they realized that they had lost this round, and they just withdrew, lived to fight another day. So that's basically where we're at right now, and yeah, that's about it. I mean, altogether, if you look at the Ukrainians' counteroffensive as a whole, including throughout all of Ukraine, in Kherson, I mean, this is what the Ukrainians have been able to achieve. They took Vysokopilia, which is a village. So they took this village. And over here, this bridgehead hasn't been able to progress really. Mainly, it's been centered around Suky Stavok. But one of the reasons for that is this river, the Inglitz River. The Russians keep... basically, they keep allowing the Ukrainians to cross. Then they'll destroy the pontoon bridges once the Ukrainian troops have crossed. Then they'll just bomb the Ukrainians relentlessly. So, and the Ukrainians keep sending reinforcements. So I don't know why, because this is obviously a cauldron, but they're not giving up that easily. Here in this area, the Ukrainians have made some gains. The Russians and Ukrainians fought over Ternovy Podi, this hamlet here. And recently the Ukrainians were able to push a little more to the southeast and take Zeleny, Har, and Barinok. But let's zoom in on one of these settlements. And then you realize that, these, if this loads, as you can see, this settlement, these settlements all in this area are, some of them are abandoned from what I hear, and like this settlement, it's basically not even 1 kilometer squared, not even close to 1 mile squared, and it's just like a road stop kind of village. Like it has maybe a few dozen houses at most, and that's about it. So that's not really that big of a deal. And then Alexandrivka, we just got a report just a few minutes ago. I got a report that for the fifth or sixth time in 12 days, the Ukrainians tried to take Alexandrivka. On this map, it shows the Ukrainians control it, but no, it's controlled by the Russians. That's a fact. And they tried and they failed for the sixth time. Well, you know what they say: if at first you don't succeed, try and try again. But when it comes to Alexandrivka and when it comes to that little micro cauldron they have going, I don't know if they should keep trying, because they're sustaining. I mean, in this region, from all the pictures and videos I've seen, it seems like the Ukrainians have sustained significant, a decent amount of losses at the least, and they have made very incremental, meager gains. So I don't know if, I don't know what they're planning to do here, but altogether this is a mixed bag, and I'll tell you why it's a mixed bag. Because when during the first phase of the war, when the Ukrainians were fighting back to everyone's surprise, and they pushed out the Russians, a lot of people, especially in the West, corporate media, were concentrating on Kiev and Kharkiv and destroyed Russian equipment. But meanwhile, in the south, you see this is Crimea, but meanwhile in the south, the Russians quickly took Kherson, and then they quickly pushed east, and they established a bridgehead with the Donbass, which was one of their main goals. And then that, of course, led to Mariupol being surrounded, and we all know how that ended. Over, I think, 4,000 prisoners were taken in the end. But anyway, so yeah, that's the big picture, and I promised I would keep this video short. So anyways, that's it, guys. Please like, share, subscribe, and comment below, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.